Hey, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whenever you happen to be listening to this podcast or watching us, and welcome to On This Hill, podcast of Church on the Hill. You'll notice that our background is a little bit different than normal. That's because our campus that houses our studio is under construction, so we got kicked out for a couple weeks, but we'll be back. But thanks for joining us. And our guests today, Ruben and Michelle Zook, who are working in missions in an interesting place. We'll hear a little bit more about that. But how about you guys? How long you been married, and how many kids? How long you been in full-time missions?
Yeah, so we've been in missions for 13 and a half years now. Been in Southeast Asia for 10 years.
10 years.
And we just hit our 20th wedding anniversary this June.
Well, congratulations. Yeah.
We have 3 kids.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah.
What are the ages of your kids?
All teenagers, so 13, 15, and 17.
Yeah. Oh, that's well. So we use the term Southeast Asia because we really don't want to speak about the particular nation you're in or city, but Southeast Asia has a lot of megacities, and the particular country you're in, what percentage of that of the population would you say are Christian? Are there churches everywhere? Is it unchurched?
It's a very unchurched area. There would be certain pockets that would have Christian, but for the majority of the nation, it's very unchurched.
Yeah.
A lot of people haven't even heard the name of Jesus. So.
For the first time.
Yeah.
In mission, Southeast Asia is a frontier, right? It's a place where, like you said, you don't go if there's a lot of churches there. You go because there are none.
Yeah.
Now, you guys are not involved necessarily in church planting, but you're involved in a ministry that's a little bit of a niche, but super important. What talk about that? What do you guys do over there?
Yeah, so we focus on anti-trafficking work, and we reach out to women that have been caught up in the sex trafficking, sex tourism. And we have a safe house over there, and we do rescues, and we have an outreach center, and we go in and we meet with them, we give them gifts, and we also pray for them. And when they are ready, we rescue them and bring them into the safe house. Yeah.
So the term you just used a minute ago, sex tourism, I think in the West here and in the United States, that has been brought into kind of question. Does that really exist? Is that a real thing, or is that just some sort of political propaganda? Because there'll be some people that say, I can't believe that's even a thing. Where people that are on the ground, like you guys, dealing with real people, it is a reality.
It's a major reality. We're in an area that there's like a triangle going on between our area and some of the other areas in that area that it's the pedophiles will travel around in that area looking for that, and they'll do pornography over here, and then they'll go over there just to get the actual
just to meet. Hence the term sex tourism.
So even for our area, you can actually go online and find a map that details the locations for these tourists to go to be able to buy children. And
of course, where there's a market for that type of perversion, there is somebody being exploited and someone doing the exploiting. So can you talk, what does that look like? I mean, how do the exploiters pull people into that orbit? How does someone end up in being trafficked sexually? Yeah,
for the local girls, they expect they're getting a legit job, and they're coming out of the villages where they're really poor, and so they at 13, they're expected to provide for their families. They don't finish their schooling. They can't often finish their schooling because around that age, they have to start paying for school. Up till that age, their school is free. And then after that, they have to start paying for school. And so at that age, they drop out of school and they have to find a job. And so they'll take job offers, restaurant work, other things in the bigger cities, and they think they have legit work. And
so somehow that's advertised. They find out about it, like just websites,
so, Facebook, online.
Yeah, and then recruiters will go into the villages and say, "Hey, I have a hotel job, restaurant job. Will you allow your daughters to come with me?"
And oftentimes it's the girls themselves recruiting. They'll get a bonus if they recruit their friends. And so the sex traffickers will convince and use the girls themselves to traffic their friends.
Yeah, they can pay off their debt because they're held by a debt. And so they can pay off their debt quicker and be able to leave if they go and recruit others to come.
And where does the debt come from?
So it comes from like their plane tickets, their documents, all that. They generally at least double what the normal cost of it would be. And then like their housing, their food, clothes, all of that is put onto a tab that
kind of you end up with an indentured servitude sort of a thing.
Yeah. So they basically make it impossible for them to be able to pay it off.
Yeah. So how did you guys? You've been there for 10 years, and big city, so no end in sight, so to speak. Yeah. It's like a cancer in a society or a culture. And I think most of our listeners are familiar with the idea that, hey, trafficking is a real thing, whether it's sex trafficking or, forced labor or, youth labor or something like that. But how did you guys find that particular niche in the place you're in? How did that come about?
Yeah. So we, when we were praying about where we wanted to go, we felt like God was leading us to this particular place. And yeah, I'll let Ruben explain. There's a really cool story of how like God just lighted the fire within us. And that all started actually here in Portland.
So we came here to Salem to do our DTS. And our
YWAM discipleship school.
So our heart was to go to an unreached area, a place that not many people had heard about Jesus, Southeast Asia, but we didn't really, that was our focus. We didn't really have any knowledge of anti-trafficking work. That wasn't on our radar at all. And so then when we came and did our discipleship training school here, the base had a program where they would run, it was a night of experiencing injustices around the world, and was acted out scenes. And one of those scenes that we walked through and seen was sex trafficking. And that night, kind of at the end, then they would ask the question, what is it that God is asking you to do about these injustices? And that night for both of us, that particular scene was highlighted. And so we started just doing a lot of research, a lot of like, how do ministries do this? What does it look like? How do they do street outreach? And so we finally got to the point where like, okay, we can't just research, like we want to do something. And we had felt we were called to be in Salem for 2 years in preparation for going overseas. And so we got a team together and we went to Portland around midnight, had put together some gifts, and we got out of the street, and it's just overwhelmed with the amount of people on the street. There's a lot of partying. We were seeing money being exchanged and just overwhelmed. But neither one of us had any experience in that type of environment before. And so we were just standing there praying like, okay, God, we're here, but how do we even start? How do we go about this? And so we were standing in front of one of the clubs, and we seen a girl standing there with a guy standing on each side of her, and she was counting money. And so Michelle was like, well, I think that's the girl we're supposed to start with. And so we'll wait till they're done with their transaction or with her counting her money, and then she'll go up and give her the gift and tell her that she's loved and valued, and then we'll go look for the next girl to talk to. And so we just kept standing there. Well, she just kept standing there counting money. So finally Michelle was like, okay, I'm just going to go up and give her the gift. And so she goes up and gave her the gift and gave her a hug, told her that she's loved and valued. And the girl right away broke down in tears and gave her a big hug. And they talked for a little bit, but then she had to go back to work. So we started walking down the street looking for the next girl to talk to. Well, the two guys followed us and caught up to us and started asking us lots of questions. Who are you? What are you guys doing? Like, what organization are you with? Well, we hadn't prepped ourselves to answer questions for guys on the street. We had only talked about, okay, how are we going to talk to the girls? So we were being really vague, like, okay, being as vague as possible on our answer, who we were. And they just kept pressing. And so finally, Michelle was like, well, we're with our Heavenly Father, and we want these girls to know they're loved. And the guy goes, well, that's what it is. He says, can I give you a word of advice? And we're like, okay, sure. If you want to, this was probably about 1 a.m. by this time. And so he's like, he goes, what you guys are doing? He goes, it's amazing. But he says, right now, it's just an idea in your head. He says, you move it from your head to your heart, you'll be unstoppable. And it was like an adrenaline shot in our arm. Like, we were like, okay, we're on the right track. Like, we're definitely in.
That's wild.
So then we were like, okay, who are these guys?
Yeah, that's my question.
And so we started asking them, and he says, well, what if I told you I speak every language in the world? And we're like, no, that's not possible. And he says, well, you can test me, try me. And so we had about 5 of us in our group, and so we came up with about 5-6 languages that at least one person in our group could verify. And we would name the language, and without hesitating, he would start speaking the language fluently. And we're like, how did you learn all these languages? Like, where are you from? And he says, I'm from heaven. And he turns around and walks away. So that was our first night of outreach.
Yeah.
But it's really, it's something like that word of moving it from our head to our heart will be unstoppable is really something that's continued to stick with us as we've gone.
That's a great intro into the outreach, into the ministry.
Yeah. And that's where we got the name Unstoppable Love for the ministry as well. So it's been, we knew what we wanted. We were called to do that day, but it became a deeper calling that day.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So Portland, Oregon was your kind of getting your toe in the water.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Then you decided to move to this particular city. How big is the city you're in right now? More or less population-wise?
Yeah, population-wise, it's around 4 million.
So,
and then
size.
you have another at least 10 million tourists every year.
Yeah.
So it's big.
Wow. So you guys get there, you get on the ground, you get set up, and just getting set up is a whole nother thing. But then you go to work trying to encounter, meet, build friendships, rescue these women. What does that look like? So, I mean, what's the process? Like, what if you were to track it? What's the strategy?
Yeah. So we have outreaches every week, and that outreach is like from 7 p.m. till 12
because it's a night thing, obviously.
Yep.
Yeah.
And we give them a gift on outreach, and in that gift we have a contact card where they have a phone number that they can reach out for us.
So let me back up. Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt.
Okay.
So you have a bag of something that has a gift in it, and like, what's in the bag?
It can be hair ties, makeup, anything a girl would like.
Right, got it. Okay.
Yes.
And then you go to these areas, because there must be certain areas, right?
Yeah, there is.
And where you know that trafficking is going on, the sex trade is taking place. Yeah. You just walk up to them and start a conversation?
So in our location, most of the areas are actually brothels. That we call them aquariums, where it's a glass window with a room where the girls sit inside the room, and the guys come up to the window and can pick which girl through the window. So our team goes and actually sits inside that room with the girls and hands out gifts and has conversation with the girls. And
you can go in?
We go in, yeah.
So one thing that God said from the start when we were praying, asking him for strategy from the start, was he said, go in, walk in with authority, dress up and walk in with authority. And we did that on the very first day. We walked in, we just said, we have these gifts for these girls and we're just coming to bless them. And we walked straight in, and it was like everything just parted. And we've been doing that ever since. And it has just...
Yeah, so we give out about 400 gifts every month now. So we're averaging around 400 women that we're interacting.
So that's 400 encounters.
Yeah. Yes.
Conversations with these women. Yeah. And you walk in, and when you give them a gift, what's their response? Are they ashamed? Are they afraid? Are they open? Are they welcoming?
Sometimes they're shocked. Sometimes they're like, why are you giving me a gift? And sometimes they just cry. And sometimes they're like, wow. Why are you giving? Why? And sometimes they're afraid. The international girls are very afraid. We have local girls and international girls.
Women that have come from other countries.
Yes.
Got pulled into this.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. So they tend to kind of not want to talk, but we tend to try to, just gently say, hey, no big deal. We're just trying to give you a gift. But yeah, the locals, they can't believe that someone just wants to love them.
And we've been doing it for so many years, so some of these girls are still stuck in the situation, but we've built friendships with them. So every time we show up, there's a big smile, of excitement to see us there, and
One girl, she was trafficked from 3 years old. It took us 5 years of visiting her regularly before she came out into the safe house.
At the age of 8 years old.
She was trafficked at 3.
Okay.
We got her out at the age of 36.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
But
so for almost the only life she'd ever known was a trafficked life.
Yes. And so to trust someone, there was just no
frame of reference.
Yeah. And so just our consistency and going to her and just, she said, I don't know why it took me so long to trust you guys. I don't know why it took me so long to get ready. She goes, I don't know. But she goes, now I'm ready. So
many questions here that a woman gets. You use the word rescued, but where does she go? You're literally trying to get her out of the environment, provide for her a place to stay, a place to live, get back on her feet, and find normal life somehow. What does that look like?
So each rescue is so different. There's some where they've been in the system for a while, so it's their choice to be there, and so we assist them to get out, and we bring them into our care. So there's that type of rescue. There's another type of rescue. We just did one a couple months ago where she was literally 6 months age difference than my daughter. And we had to go several plane rides away to literally go and get her out and work alongside of police officials to get her because she could not get out. She was literally locked in.
We met her on one of our outreaches, and then she was re-trafficked or moved to another location, and then they reached out to us and said, we need help. And so in those cases, once we get them out, then they are brought into the safe house and they enter a 1-year program of rehabilitation and learn skills.
That safe house is manned by staff members?
Yes. Yeah. Oh. And so we have girls that are going through finishing their education because at 13, they didn't finish their education. So now they're finishing their education. And
there must be a tremendous amount of trauma that's associated with these women, what they've experienced, what they've gone through. How does that begin to get dealt with?
Yeah, we have counseling. Each girl goes through counseling every week with the counselor. And we also do different weekly classes with them as well, that helping them deal with family relationships. And we use a Christian codependency workbook, a really good workbook that helps them deal with relationships in their families and stuff. And so all of that helps them in their trauma.
Where does I realize you do what you do because of the power of the gospel. How do you bring the gospel to bear on situations? Because, part of this is a physical thing of we got to literally get you out of this environment. But then you've got the dealing with the trauma, the counseling. How do you see the gospel? Because most of these women, I assume, have no understanding of the gospel, no background, haven't really heard the message. But obviously it must give you an opportunity, right, to share.
Yeah, so for us it starts with the outreaches, being intentional with our purpose of doing these outreaches. One is to meet them and be able to offer them an opportunity to get out physically. But more importantly, we want to offer them spiritual freedom. And so with our team, we are very intentional in making sure that when we're in those places, that if we have opportunities to pray with the girl or to share just a little bit about who Jesus is, we take those opportunities. And it's a seed that's planted that then often is kind of the start of that trust being built, because there's a curiosity, there's something, they're drawn to the love that they haven't experienced before. So we had one girl that we went in and Michelle prayed with her, and we found out later, she told us later that she had been there for like 3 days and had lost hope. She has basically said, okay, I can't get out of this. I'm doomed. But our team came in, Michelle prayed with her, and she said that prayer, something inside her rose up and she had a renewed determination to get away. So she waited, looked for an opportunity to get out of it for like 2 weeks. She was behind a locked door. And one night she was able to get out. And so she ran down the street looking for help and ran up to a guy that was there by some taxis. And normally in that area, most of your Western guys are going to be customers.
Right.
But this particular guy ended up being from one of the local churches. And he was able to connect her with the safe house. Mm-hmm. And when she got there, she's like, I don't know who this Jesus is, but this lady came in and prayed with me, and I want to know who this Jesus is.
Wow.
And so,
the most beautiful thing is seeing them come to the freedom in Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
That is when they get both physical and spiritual freedom. There's just nothing like it. Mm-hmm. Because they start smiling, they change character, and it's so beautiful. Mm-hmm. There's nothing like seeing someone meet Jesus.
Yeah.
They've done research in Southeast Asia on trauma and like survivors, and the research done says that 97% of these girls that are rescued, if they don't experience Jesus and come to know Jesus, 97% will end up back in the situation because of the amount of trauma and dealing with it. Jesus is the only one that's going to truly be able to bring that full healing.
Yeah.
And
so somehow this exists either illegally. I'm assuming it's illegal.
Yes.
But there's something in the system that allows it to exist without being dismantled or exposed. Or is that so? You guys have to work around that. I mean, who do you trust? Do you trust the government? Do you trust the authorities?
So we're still looking for that person in the government and within the police to be able to trust and work with. So that's why most of our rescues we do with just our own team, and that also is why the process of like the girl has to make that decision herself of I want out, which then allows us to be able to assist her to get her out of the situation. We've attempted with other government officials, and girls have disappeared because we've leaked information, and so it's definitely a prayer request that we keep praying for, that we'll find that trusted man of peace within the police department, within government, that would be willing to stand up for
person of integrity.
Yeah, because we see we're in those places, we see money being exchanged. They have to pay so much every month to operate. So.
Having been in that type of a ministry in Latin America and seeing some of that behind the scenes injustice and graft and so forth, that can be super demoralizing and frustrating and oppressive. How does that come into play in your lives and in your team? What's the struggle emotionally, spiritually for you guys look like?
Oh, that one's a tough one.
I mean, how do you handle it? You see, it's almost like on one hand, the traffickers, the worst of humanity. I mean, just the absolute evil of trafficking in human flesh, especially a minor, a vulnerable woman. I remember the times I encountered that, it created in me just so much anger and frustration, like a sense of, and I can't even begin to imagine, that's just me, a human being. I can't imagine what Jesus feels when he sees that. But that has to be processed somehow.
Yeah. When I come back from rescues, I go through a lot. I go through night terrors. There's definitely PTSD involved. It is not an easy ministry at all.
Not for the faint of heart.
No, it is not. It has, I remember one time after watching a documentary for the first time before we even got going in the ministry, I went to the bathroom just screaming, angry. But fast forward, going to actually doing it. And the hardest part about this last rescue was it was like, okay, I knew this girl was only 6 months age different from my own daughter, and I just remember telling her, just be patient. We're coming for you. Yeah, it's not for the faint of heart. It's, you know, a lot of people ask, well, how can we help? You know, there are ways you can help. You can, you know, integrity in your own lives. Porn,
just feeds the beast.
it does. It does. Start with integrity in your families. Start with your children. Dealing with issues at home. You know, trafficking here in the United States is bad because families are broken here in America. And so taking care of the families here, you know, working with the families here, working on marriages, working on families here.
Disadvantaged people, vulnerable people.
Yeah. And, you know, that's one way you can help here. And, you know, over there, you know, there are so many ministries, you know, that you can fund and help and pray for and support. That's a way you can get behind and support.
You guys took it from a general interest in missions. You come into Youth with a Mission, not exactly knowing where God's going to lead you. Then you get exposed to this need. Then you begin to get involved in it locally in Portland. And then you end up, you know, for a decade in Southeast Asia. If someone was wanting to, because I think in this country there is a lot of talk about trafficking, but I think between the talk and the actual doing something, there's sometimes is quite a gap. But some of the things you just mentioned of seriously investigating, is that hey, what does trafficking look like around me in my own country? How could I serve locally? How do I walk in integrity in my own life? Those are all sort of on-ramps, so to speak.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I just looked, you know, we just had somebody asking about trafficking here in Portland, and I just looked. It only took me 2 seconds to Google the ministries that are here in Portland, and it pulled up a huge list of ministries here, right here in our own state.
Yeah.
Safe houses and ministries. And so ways you can serve right here.
Yeah. That's just so crazy to think, you know, it's sometimes we think, oh, the problem's out there. And it is, but it's also in our own backyard.
Yeah.
Tell us, just how about a win? What's one story that we can kind of finish with that you could go, that was a win? Because I know they're not all wins. Some of it you just go out and you're not sure what happened that night. You're not sure what happened with this person, but you have a story that's a win.
Yeah. I think it's interesting. This particular story. A few years ago, we felt like we were supposed to start praying for the traffickers as well, because we feel like for true transformation to happen, like it's not just these women that we're rescuing, but the traffickers also need to experience God's love so that there's change that happens. And so this one particular community has about 30. It's a slum community, and the economy of it is basically 33 brothels, karaoke bars, and that's its full existence is those. And so we started doing outreach as a team into that area, and through the outreaches, we got to know this couple that was running one of those brothels. It was a husband and wife, and he was pimping out girls and also selling his wife as well, and they were together running this business. And so we got to know them and gave them gifts and started talking with them. And over time of outreaches, different times, they started, experiencing God's love. And so God did a transformation work in their lives. They both became Christians, and he's passed away because of cancer, but she's still living for the Lord. And they came to us and said, we have this building. We don't want it used for bad anymore. We don't want it used as a brothel anymore. Can you guys use it for something? And so we're actively now working on renovations of it. We're making it into an outreach center, a drop-in center, where we want to see transformation happen throughout that community through this place. But that's just one amazing example of He planted a seed and that grew. And there's one place out of those 30 some places now that is no longer
being used for
evil, and it's a beacon of light in that community.
Yeah. And so you guys are in the process of renovating that and
Yeah.
trying to make it an outreach center. That's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
So we got the front half renovated. We're working on the back half, which the back half is where the beds were at. So we're dying to just break up those beds and get that completely torn apart.
That's so amazing.
Yeah.
My goodness. Both of you guys will be with us again the last 2 Sundays in August, and we'll be doing an interview similar to what we're doing right here. Probably not as long, but you'll be available after each service. If someone wants to meet you personally, talk with you. I know that a woman from our church recently just went and spent how much time with you? Just
3 months.
3 months. So a short-term investment. And she went over and just came alongside, showed up, and started to serve with you.
Yeah, she did.
Yeah.
It was amazing to have her.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a blessing. So that's another way that someone could get involved is coming and doing short term or long term with us.
Yeah.
And she had no previous experience in this type of work, and she was able to come and really be a blessing and
jump right
assist
in.
us. Yeah.
It's interesting, you don't. What you need is the love of God and perseverance and a trust, an unshakable trust, and then, like you just said, the name of the ministry, Unstoppable Love.
Yeah.
It's not our love, right?
Yeah.
We're not. There's no way we could sustain it if it was just human love.
No. No.
Yeah. Man, you guys, thanks for being with us.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Ruben, Michelle, and the kids. Again, I hope your time here in Oregon is refreshing and so forth. And if you're listening and this has been inspirational to you, or you think someone else would benefit from this, pass this along, would you? Come the last couple Sundays in August, Church on the Hill, Kaiser Campus, South Campus. They can meet you guys in person. Listen to kind of what's going on and how they can get involved, how they can serve. Maybe someone's out there is saying, I want to help get this renovation done in that building. And so, we'll give you some more details.
Yeah.
So thanks you guys for being with us, and thank you for watching. And again, if someone would benefit, pass it along. Would you? If there's anything we can do for you, give us a call or reach out through our webpage, and we'd be happy to help. God bless. Take care.